看今天的汉天新闻，我是赵子彤。首先来看美国国内消息。日前，拉斯维加斯警方公布了一则监控录像视频，内容是发生在新年期间的一件绑架事件。以下部分画面可能会引发不适，请斟酌观看。根据警察局提供的录像带显示，一名女子砰砰地敲打前门，尖叫求助，然后在凌晨12点48分左右被拖到车上，过程极其残暴。现在嫌疑人仍然没有被指认，警方期望通过视频向公众搜索线索。
This is a absolutely violent crime.
Moments of terror caught on camera just after midnight on New Year's. A suspected kidnapping victim attempting to flee and get help.
The residence video surveillance system at the house went off, where that concerned citizen saw a female victim running to the residence requesting help, and a white sedan pull up.
Stop, Darko!
Police say this video was critical in catching the kidnapping suspect.
Get in the car.
We had the assumption that this was the subject and our victim.
The fact that she said his name on camera made a big difference.
Made a big difference, a huge difference.
The victim's boyfriend, 23-year-old Darnell Rogers, is now facing kidnapping and domestic battery charges. And if this crime wasn't disturbing enough...
There was a 1-month-old child in that car at the time of this.
I'm Reed Binion reporting.
在2019年底，相关部门进行了一项数据统计。2019年成为美国自1970年以来最为暴力的一年。2019年，全美共发生41起大规模杀戮事件，其中33起为大规模枪击事件，导致211人死亡，受伤人数无法统计。所谓大规模杀戮事件，是指单起致死4人以上的杀人事件。41起大规模杀戮事件中有33起涉枪，表明枪支管控不力仍是导致美国社会暴力事件频发的主要原因。两党立场的对立、利益集团的干扰、存在无数漏洞的控枪法案，却让枪支管控体系在美国难以得到改变。
While mass shootings at times leave the country in disbelief, in places like Baltimore and Chicago, gun violence is a grim part of life.
What people think of as traditional policing has to be much smarter, has to be much more focused.
Former Los Angeles Police Chief Charlie Beck is now the interim police superintendent in Chicago, a city that ended 2019 with a more than 10% drop in murders for a third year in a row, and down more than 30% since a spike in 2016 that saw more killings than New York and LA combined.
What are some of the questions that you get about the city of Chicago, about crime in Chicago, and how do you answer those questions?
To be brutally honest, it's still not safe enough. 500 homicides is, even though that's a nice milestone, it's way too many.
But it's not just policing. Even hospitals are trying to break this deadly cycle, taking the time to sit with shooting victims and evaluate the direction of their lives.
We use this unique opportunity to really drill down with people on not only their risk factors, but their hopes, their dreams, their emotional experience of being injured.
The goal is not to see them again.
The goal is not to see them again, ever.
They're among the tactics being used in cities across the country, trying to change what has become, in some places, an unshakable narrative. Often among the highest murder rates of big U.S. cities, New Orleans has made progress, seeing its third consecutive drop in homicides last year. But St. Louis, which had the highest murder rate of big U.S. cities in recent years, saw an increase in homicides compared to 2018. And Baltimore ended the year with the second most homicides they've had on record, just under 350. Cities like New York and Los Angeles didn't even hit that mark, and they have more than 5 times the people.
We can talk all day about what to do after someone is killed, but we must also have a hard conversation about why the perpetrators of violence have no regards for human life.
Baltimore is now one of 7 cities within the Department of Justice's Operation Relentless Pursuit, an initiative aimed at combating violent crime. And in Washington, Congress approved millions for federal research into gun violence for the first time in over 20 years. Federal and city efforts meant to go hand in hand at the dawn of a new decade.
I know it seems difficult when you're in the middle of this, but I have nothing but the most positive belief in the outcome of what we're doing here.
美国入境和海关执法局 ICE 日前发表一份声明称，2019财年该机构逮捕了约14.3万外国人，这个数字比去年同期下降了10%。然而，全美范围内逮捕的非法入境人数比同期增加了68%。另外，他们还协助边境安全管理局驱逐了26.7万名外国人。仅在去年8月7日 ，ICE 在一次行动中对美国南部密西西比州的7家工厂进行搜查，一天之内逮捕了共计680名非法移民。史无前例的频繁执法活动给一些移民经营的厂商造成了严重的影响，甚至危及到了他们的生命线。
Like so many others here, Sofia Hernandez is worried. 3 years ago, she used the money she saved while working at the local chicken plants to buy this Mexican market. But now, with business crippled by the ICE raids in August, she doesn't know if she'll be able to keep it open. She's had to cut the hours of her employees.
Y pues gracias a ellos estoy sobreviviendo.
Pero sí estás preocupada. Yes, you're worried. Se ve en su cara.
Un poco.
You're worried.
Sí, un poco. Un poco porque no sabemos qué vaya a pasar.
Latinos make up nearly a quarter of the more than 3,600 residents in Morton, Mississippi, but looking at the streets, you wouldn't be able to tell. As rumors spread of another raid, most have chosen to spend their days in hiding. In the nearly 4 months since the raids on chicken processing plants across 6 Mississippi cities, Miguel Tambres' wife is among the dozens still detained, leaving him to care for their 3 children alone. Their daughter was just 4 months old when it happened. She was still nursing. She cried and cried, he says of his baby. There were days when I was in such despair, but I had to keep on fighting for her, he says. He's physically and mentally exhausted, and so is his wife. Recently, while in custody, she signed voluntary deportation orders. Soon, the family will be reunited again, but not in the United States. It's not that it was hard for me, it still is hard for me, he says, about the financial burden of being the sole breadwinner and now sole caretaker. Those who were released from ICE custody with court dates were let go on the condition that they couldn't work. And that makes it pretty hard to pay the bills, which means they've had to rely on the kindness of others, including churches like this one. But even they don't know how much longer it'll last. Sheila Cumbest had only been pastor at the United Methodist Church in Morton for 4 weeks when the raids happened. Her life and her church have been consumed by the event ever since.
Just in Morton alone, we're probably helping 110, 115 families. Paying bills is expensive. So far, the money we've spent is around $151,000 since the first week. Every day, it's just facing the same sort of despair in people's lives and wondering what's next.
Even the mayor says the town has changed since the raids. He tells us the plant raided in Morton accounts for 45% of the city's revenue, a business powered by Latino labor. Despite what happened, he says, Latinos are still welcome in Morton.
Regardless, I mean, whether they're documented or undocumented, you should have compassion for your labor.
But for the Latinos still left in Morton, the life they once saw for themselves here may no longer exist. Nick Valencia, CNN.
正式迈入2020年总统大选的浪潮也被越炒越热，各位民主党参选人正在马不停蹄地开始自己新年的新一轮选战。日前，参选人印第安纳州南本德市市长皮特·布迪吉格在新年的第1次党团会议上发表了精彩的演讲，针对政治、经济、弹劾等多方面问题发表意见。尤其强调了自己针对不久前刚刚发生在美国驻伊拉克使馆遭到袭击事件的立场和态度。
Hello. Good morning and thank you for joining us. Thanks for the warm welcome. Been looking forward to the opportunity to ask in person for your vote and to talk with you about where our country is headed and the values that are motivating this campaign. But before we do any of that, I want to begin by addressing what's going on in the Middle East. If you've had anything to do with Middle East policy or security, you know that Qasem al-Soleimani was not a good guy. He has blood on his hands from countless operations against American interests, American allies, and American citizens. It's also the case that if we have learned nothing else from the Middle East in the last 20 years, it's that taking out a bad guy is not a good idea unless you are ready for what comes next. So there are a lot of questions that Americans are asking today. First of all, was this decision made carelessly or was it made strategically? Was there any preparation for the secondary effects and the effects that are going to come after that? From an extremely provocative act that both of the last two administrations decided not to do in one of the most volatile and unstable times, in one of the most volatile and unstable places in the world. Was Congress consulted? Because the last time I checked, the power to go to war in the United States of America rests with Congress. Were our allies consulted? Because we have allies whose life and death interests, right alongside ours, are at stake in the decisions that were made. America is going to be asking those questions in very serious terms over the next few days. As a military intelligence officer on the ground in Afghanistan, I was trained to ask these questions before a decision is made. And I know right now, across the country, a lot of families with members of the military are going to be holding each other a little more tightly, wondering what this might mean. Even as we have citizens in and out of uniform right now, as we speak, who may be in danger across the region. And we will learn more and decide more as a people, as a country, in the days to come. But one thing I am certain of right now is this. This must not be the beginning of another endless war. So I wanted to make sure I shared that at the beginning, and it's a reminder of what's at stake in this election. It's a reminder of what will be waiting for the next president, who will be picking up the pieces after the Trump administration has gone into the rearview mirror. And it is difficult to say, even as we hope that that day is just about a year away, exactly what will be going on over there at that time. But what we know is that we are going to need wisdom. We're going to need judgment. We're going to need strategic thinking more than we ever had. And this election is a contest, a competition not only to decide who the nominee is going to be to bring an end to the Trump presidency, but to decide who will lead America in the era that's got to come next. So let me turn to the image that I ask voters everywhere to consider, to contemplate, to visualize in as much detail as possible, and I'm going to ask you to visualize it with me. Picture that first day that the sun comes up over New Hampshire and Donald Trump is no longer the president of the United States. We're ready for that day to come about, right?
休息一下，马上回来。